Okay, we are in Tzidkas Hatzadik Ois Mem Daled, and it's two things. It's very Tzadok and it's very Yesodistic in Tzadok. So the subject here is Yetzer Hara. And whatever I think about Yetzer Hara, I think about two things. One is the trauma of my youth. The Rebbe was always talking about Yetzer Hara. But I also have a memory that when I left Yerushalayim, Pam Rishona, to be a Rav in America, so I went to ask Rav Scheinberg Zatzal for some eitzes. He'll give me some practical eitzes, and he gave me a lot of them. It was write a book on those eitzes, to live a life on those eitzes. That 20 minutes was very powerful. But one of the things he told me is that, like, when you get up to give a drasha, don't speak about the Yetzer Hara. That's what he told me. He said that when he came back from Mir Yeshiva in Europe, so he was looking for a job. It was difficult in those years to find a job. So he was offered a proba in, I think it was Auckland, Maine. Be a rabbi in Auckland, Maine. And, he was excited about it because, Parnassa, be a rabbi, like at that time, I think it was 24 or something like that. So he went to Auckland, Maine for Shabbos with the Rebbetzin, and he spoke. He had just come back from Mir Yeshiva and Rabbi Yerucham and, that whole situation there. So he spoke about the Yetzer Hara. That's what he spoke about. And they immediately dismissed him as a candidate. So he told me, whatever you do, don't talk about the Yetzer Hara. Which so I never talk about the Yetzer Hara. Maybe this is the first time I'm talking about the Yetzer Hara. I don't talk about the Yetzer Hara too much. But the other thing I want to say about it is that it's always been confusing to me, and I want to try to sort that out now. The idea here is that the way we're taught is that there's two kochos in a person, and your Yetzer, like in English, it's the good inclination, the evil inclination. Not sure what inclination means exactly, but what you are inclined to do, I presume. So if you're inclined to do something wrong, that's your Yetzer Hara. Like don't do that. If you're inclined to do something good, it's good. And there's this whole war going on within us about, like, who am I supposed to listen to? Like, there's two voices inside of me. And in fact, that's a Gemara. The Gemara says that L'olam yargiz adam Yetzer Hara, Yetzer Hatov. The Gemara says you should if you don't feel a machlekes, make one. Yargiz adam, that's my Yetzer Hara, that's my Yetzer Hatov. And in that context, if we understand it that way, so we have, like, within us good and evil. Like there's something bad inside of us. And it's a little bit troubling that, like, there's something bad, and your whole life you have to, or most of your life anyways, you have to, like, be fighting with this evil thing inside of us. And why can't it be that there's just like one me, and I'm trying to develop myself and get myself into a good, holy, productive routine instead of a negative routine, which is the path of least resistance, usually. And I'm becoming a good person. Like, what do I have to have a whole war going on inside of me of Yetzer Hara, Yetzer Hatov? I don't know if you find it troubling. I find it troubling. So just before we see what Rav Tzadok says, I was trying to. I have this beautiful sefer, which I highly recommend. It's called Das Ramchal. And what he does, he goes through everything the Ramchal says, and he organizes it. And I love Svarim that organize things because I'm not so organized myself, and don't keep good notes and things. But here, it's very, he takes from all the Ramchals. The Ramchal could be in the Klach, or the Ramchal could be in the Mesilas Yesharim, like all the Ramchal, and you sort of get a picture of the Das Ramchal. So I just looked up Yetzer Hara. What does the Ramchal say about Yetzer Hara? Now I know what the Ramchal says about Yetzer Hara because I looked Kehillas Shivtei Yeshurun as a kid, and I don't want to go into my. But just a couple of quotes from the Kehillas Shivtei Yeshurun. Achas mitach pulos hayetzer hara v'aramosei lahachbid avoidosei b'tzmidus al libais b'nei ha'adam Kehillas Shivtei makes life very hard, makes your avodah very hard. Achla yisher lam koyach lisboinen listakel be'ez ezederechem holchem confuses us such that we don't see a clear way in front of us. There's no clear path. It comes out like it's atzas paroi harosha. Give them a lot of work so they can't think properly, and that's your Yetzer Hara, just like the stress and the tension and the confusion and the rush of life. So Zisharm says further, Yetzer Hara ish milchamahu. He's out to get you. Bar Mumius, works Bar Mumius, v'efshirli malet mimeno, b'chachma rabba v'ashkafa gedola, simu levavchem al darchechem. Hayetzer mesame eseinov mamish. Yetzer Hara mamish blinds you, v'hu kohelech b'choshech, sheyesh lefanav michsholos, v'eina royois, u'masha amru tashas choshech v'layla. Whole olam hazeh is all about Yetzer Hara. Yetzer Hara, who is all in the same place, Yetzer Hara, chazak ma'oid, Chazakhu ma'oid ba'adam, u'mibliyid yasay shel adam, hoylech u'misgaber b'ay v'shoylet alav, etc. Yetzer Hara, kishmai kenhu, Yetzer Hara. I would like to discover this morning, take 2 minutes of this time to understand what the word Yetzer even means. But we know what Ra means. Mitzat Sheni, if you look in the more Kabbalistic svarim of the Ramchal, I'll just read you 3 quotes that he brings here. La'aseh lavoi, Zeh pashut, ki kasher yitar ha'adam min ha'yetzer legamri, hine ein avoidasei ela b'koyach muchrach ve'ein ha'shevach magia elav klal. Let me say that again in case you didn't catch it. Zeh pashut, this is das tfunas chelak aleph. Kasher yitar adam min ha'yetzer legamri, if you get rid of your Yetzer Hara, become completely purified from this evil thing, what happens? So we know what happens. You become a big tzaddik, right? Hine ein avoidasei ela b'koyach muchrach ve'ein hashevach magia elav klal. You get no credit for anything you do anymore. Whole thing is bechira. So once you're not in a bal bechira, what are you getting credit for? So your point being, which I agree with 100%, that it's all about bechira, meaning it's all about bechira. It's all about this balance of bechira, and here he's telling us that I don't know if he's giving a hara l'maisa to not try to get rid of your Yetzer Hara, but what he is saying is that once you do get rid of your Yetzer Hara, I guess that's libi chalal b'kirbi. David HaMelech said, once you do get rid of your Yetzer Hara, then labali Chaim. I mean, if you're not, there's no shevach that comes to you, so you become like I would be Magdir what you're saying. You become like a malach. And, the main difference between a malach and a person is that a malach has no bechira. Malach is created, does a certain thing. It's like your, your phone, or like a malach. Hashem created malachim, interesting things. But bechira they don't have. Bechira is a chidush with Adam. And if you have no Yetzer Hara, you have no bechira. If you have no bechira, you're not an Adam. So if you're not an Adam, malachim don't get shevach. They give shevach because malachim are just created to, just utensils, sort of, to do things. I'm not downgrading malachim. I'm just saying that's what it is. It's not Adam. It's not Adam. Maybe higher because they don't do anything wrong, but it's not Adam in the sense of a Baal Bechira. So unclear with the Yetzer Hara. We'll get to Rav Tzadok in a second. But I just want to read you one more from the Maimar Agula, Perek Zayin. This maybe clarifies the whole thing from the Ramchal. And he says, Hayetzer Hara mitchila loy haya ra ba'adam. Didn't used to be a bad thing. Nasa rak ra acher chet adam harishon. So it sounds to me like, if you think about that for a minute, that I'm right to feel that it should all be one thing, but I'm in the wrong period. So yeah, it wasn't Ra Toiv. And in fact, we all know that there was no Bechira the way we know it today. No Yetzer Hara, and no Misa before the Chet of Adam Harishon. Because I want to note that the Gemara says, mentioned this before, the Gemara says, Hu Yetzer Hara, Hu Hasatan, Hu Malach HaMavis. Als the Zel Bezach. But we don't, it's not the same thing at all, right? The Gemara says, Hu Yetzer Hara, Hu Hasatan. If we think of these as three different things, no, same thing. Hu Malach HaMavis. So does that mean your Yetzer Hara kills you? So first of all, it was our bad choices, or that was Geyser Bisa to the Olam by the Chet of the Eitz Hadas. So you see, like at least simultaneous to the fact that we had a Yetzer Hara, as the Ramchal puts it, also we were Geyser Bisa to the Olam. So who Yetzer Hara, who Malach HaMavis. But I once heard from Rav Hutner, I heard with my ears, I didn't see it, so I don't know where this was written, but I heard from him that he said that it's Yadua, that the pshat is that the way it works is that if there's an avera you want to do, you can choose your avera. I don't have to give my examples. But if there's an avera that you feel like doing, so that's a Yetzer Hara, like, wow, I'll do that avera. That would be geschmack to do that avera. When you do the avera, so it becomes a satan. So what you've done is you've taken something external to yourself and you've internalized it. You've made it something part of you. And once it's part of you, it starts to eat you up, because now you've created a contradiction within yourself, within your neshama. And ad kedei kach, that if you don't stop it with tshuva, hu malach hamadas, it'll kill you. That's like a whole new way of understanding this hefza of Yetzer Hara. Hu Yetzer Hara, leave it outside. Be misgaber on it. But if you give in to the Yetzer Hara, hu hasatan, then it starts to be a satan to you. And a satan, the way I understand it, is a destroyer. A destroyer, not an inclination, but a destroyer. And you can always stop it. That's the chiddush of tshuva. You can always stop this flow from happening. But at the end of the day, hu malach hamavis. The question is, when it's still the bechina of Yetzer Hara, which, according to this, which is still on the outside, so what is that like now? It's out here, right? Is that now a bad thing, or is it only bad if I take it in, it becomes the satan and then the malach hamavis? But Yetzer Hara mitzad atzmai, not necessary. It's out there, It's out there, Yetzer Hara. I'm speaking kind of like esoteric. It doesn't mean anything what I'm saying, but I want to try to understand. Like, is it the Yetzer Hara that's bad? It's called Yetzer Hara. But is it the Yetzer Hara that's bad, or is it only when it becomes a satan that's bad, or when it kills me, it's bad? And that's the danger of the Yetzer Hara, but it's not the Yetzer Hara b'fnei atzmai. So comes the Ramchal, I'll just repeat it one more time. Kashi yitara adam mina Yetzer Hara lagamri. If you don't even have, in my understanding, that outside temptation, if you don't even have that, what else are you going to do but good? Of course, you're only going to do good. Ve'ein hashevach magi'ei love klal. Comes Reb Tzadok. Tzadok says like this: Mi sheyesh lei shuka gedola l'taivas haguf. You're the type of person that I really have a big taiva. Once again, name your taiva. everybody has a particular taiva. What's lashon what are the three things? Hataiva v'akavod, kina, hataiva v'akavod, mitzinas adam min ha'olam. So those are three things to be careful for. Akina, hataiva, hakavod. The Welt says that even if you're like you get old enough that you don't have any more kina, who cares, and you don't have any more taiva, why? But kavod, that one stays till the end. So you never putter from the whole Hara thing. But it's Mitzinas Adam min Olam, which is an interesting lashon, I think. Mitzinas Adam min Olam. Anyway, so Rabbi Tzadok says, Mishi yesh like shuka gedolo taivas agav, big bal taiva. Says Rabbi Tzadok, al yis atsev bazeh. Don't let that get you down. Lachshoy, when you start thinking, kama pogumhu sheyesh like shuka kol kach. How could it be that I have such a taiva? You know, like where's my head? Get your mind out of the gutter. Like what's going on here? Like, why am I even thinking such a thing? It reminds me, I once heard from Rabbi Yaacov Haber. I don't know what he was quoting, probably the Arizal, but he was saying that there's a metzias of when you're like at your highest makom of tefillah, let's say. You know, ne'ilah. Hashem hu Elokim. When you're at highest makom of tefillah, b'diuk then, like the biggest Yetzer Hara can fall into your head. You know, I want to eat a cheeseburger. That's it's a pliyat summa. I'm kulei kadosh. Kohen Gadol, Shirah carry.
Isn't there more it says in the Kipper we don't have a Yetzer Hara?
What, Yetzer Hara?
Something. Just something. Exactly. That's something. There's no prosecution.
Doesn't say we don't have a Yetzer Hara. Everybody has a Yetzer Hara. But you know, Taiva Yom Kippur, the sun, cross Sutton. Anyway, so Rav Tzadok says, don't let it get you down. Ki adarabba. Bugfarker, hu kli muchan l'toikef avas uchukas drishas emes. On the contrary, what that means, if you have this ne'ilah, evil thought, what that means is at this moment you are a kli muchan l'toikef avas uchukas drishas emes. You're in a place where you can genuinely search for truth. Can understand it now because as much as we can understand it. That meaning the two worlds which have become merged into this kind of gray area in our life, and what's right and what's wrong can be very clear at Nila. This is right. This is wrong. And now you're in a perfect position. Pashat Pshat, you're in a perfect position to have chukas drishas emes. Okay, I see what's good, I see what's bad. And it comes in the form of taiva, not in the form of yediyah. So, it's not okay, I see what's bad. I see, Hamas killing people. That's not what it's cheshek. So, but that, the cheshek itself, which is called Yetzer Hara, that's what he calls it, which is called Yetzer Hara, that cheshek itself, I'm adding, could come into a place of kedusha mamish, Kohen Gadol b'Yom Kippurim. To come this idea of Yetzer Hara, and don't get down by it. Don't think like, how's my head even thinking this, which is a natural thought, because what it really means is that you are a kli muchan. How does that work? That's a shtickle chiddush, no? Reb Tzadok. It's a kli muchan.
Maybe if I'm a person who can have strong desires, Ra, so I'm a person who can have strong desires.
So it's
the person.
It's a tchuna.
Is a person who wants, a person who has goals. Yeah, you just need to channel it in the right way.
Absolutely emes. Absolutely emes. You have to channel the right way. So, but I just I think that's 100% emes. But it's like an unbelievable thing that my taiva for I don't want to start mentioning my taivas, but let's make it easy. My taiva for food means that I'm a really ruchniistic. Rav Tzadok says in a different place that if you want to find somebody who's about tzedakah, you need to raise money. You want to find somebody who's about tzedakah, so you should try to get somebody who eats a lot. Somebody who has a taivas achila, he's going to help. He's going to help you. We all know this is intuitively true, correct? Here you go to this scrawny guy with the wire glasses, and he looks like, "What do you need money for?" Well, funny. Like, why do you need money? Like, you should learn to do without. Like I hear all the time, like such a big building, you need this, you need that, like But it's a tzimtzum hamoyach. So find a guy who's a Rav Tzadok who has a taivas achila. Now everybody think to themselves whether you're a big Baal tzedakah or not. Well, okay. This requires. So let's keep the pshat in it there, because that is the pshat. Just needs some examination. K'moshe nichamu hahu sava asher hu Eliyahu. So there's a story in the Gemara in Sukkah Nun Beis. Fantastic story. Mark tells a story. Let's look at it inside for a second. End of Nun Beis Amud Aleph. A story about Abaye. The Gemara says, which he's referencing it here, but it's good to see inside. If I find it, I'm used to the Surah Sadaf. Oh, the Gemara says like this. Like, let's remember the story. Da Abaye shame lahu gavra de kamer lahi itza. Abaye overheard a conversation. Abaye, Amira. He overheard a conversation that some guy said to some girl. Man said to a woman. The kamar, the shame lahu gavra de kamer lahi itza lemachar tomorrow niktam v'nezel beduchta plan. Let's walk on the path together. In other words, I will escort you to wherever it is that you're going. Omar, Abaye heard this, like, oh my gosh, Dolev? Omar, he said, Ezel afreshinu misura. My job now, being that I heard this, is to stop a forbidden thing from happening, and I've got to follow them and make sure that this man and this woman don't do anything wrong. She says, Nashkim b'hashkama koydem hayoim. I'm going to get up early in the morning, and I'm going to keep an eye on this situation. Also basrayu, so he followed them tlosa parse, ba'agma. He followed them for 3 pras. How much is that in English? 4 meal to a pras. So 3 pras is a lot of a couple of hours, it feels to me. Also basrayu tlosa parse ba'agma kipatri, and he's watching them carefully. And kipatri mehadodi, when they separated, shaminun Abaye heard the kamra orchen rachika v'tzavtzin b'sima. This is as far as I can go with you, because I'm going this way and you're going that way. So, and they parted ways. It was nothing went wrong. Nothing went wrong. Omar Abaye. So when Abaye heard that, like this kind of like disappointment, like no action. Amar Abaye iman desani lihave matze luukme nafshe. if this would have been me, I would not have been able, what a statement of Abaye brought down in Masor's Chazal. If this would have been me, I would not have been able to withstand this temptation. He got upset. Also, tala nafshi be'ivra dedosha v'kav v'mitzdayer. Rashi says, Iman desani liyahavi soini misyachid im isha means if my Yetzer. That's what it means. If my Yetzer would have been miyachid, shalahavi matzil ukmi an nafshim lachtay val atzmei hayoymer. Rashi says, he was saying on himself, I would have done a chet in such a case. Tola nafshi nishan al bariach hadelas. I'm not sure how that applies nowadays, but bariach hadelas, he leaned on it. Ka'adam shemachashev, like a person who is deep in thought, umitzta'er, Rashi says. Tremendous amount of tsar over the fact that like this guy is like much higher madrega than me. I would not have made it. Tana le'ahu sava, and then suddenly he had, Tosfos says, a Gilui Elio. He had a Gilui Elio. What was the Gilui Elio? So, by the way, if anybody ever asks, what's the source that the bigger you are, the bigger Yetzer, the source is Elio Navi. It was a Gilui Elio to Abaye. It doesn't say it before that. Throughout the Tanakh and Tanoim, it doesn't say that. It only says it by Abaye. And it doesn't say that it was some kind of a formulation or a Masorah that they had. They didn't have such a Masorah. Kanira, they didn't. Abaye had a Masorah, and he was the Gadol Ador by Yerova. But what happened at this point in history, that for some reason, is that there was a Gilui Eliyahu that Kol Gadol Bechavera Yitzray Gadol Mimenu, and like we quote that a lot. Kol Gadol Bechavera Yitzray Gadol Mimenu. It says Reb Tzadok. What a Gemara. So let's go back to his point that what did Elio Navi actually tell him? Like Elio actually told him, you must be a really, you must be a really great guy. You must be a really big gadol if you have such a Yetzer Hara. It's so counterintuitive. Nichamu. I'm just saying, Halabais is always different than philosophically, but if we would know such a Rebbe has such thoughts, we would fire him. And if you know a guest has such thoughts, you wouldn't invite them. So, we're not stupid. But Eliyahu Navi comes along and he says, which Tosfos proves in the beginning of Chulan there, above, that anybody, that whenever it says Ahu Sava, it means Eliyahu Navi. It's two shitas in Tosfos, whether Ahu Sava was some unknown character, or somebody who just came along. You could have a situation where somebody is completely unknown, you don't know, and all of a sudden they're telling you things that you never heard before. So that could be Ahu Sava. But Tosfos has two shitas, and one is that Ahu Sava, whenever it says Ahu Shama, that's Ahu Sava, that's Eliyahu Navi. The Shamati, says Reb Tzadok, on this Tosfos is all in parentheses, the Chenu Emes, that the Emes is like that shita in Tosfos. Shamati means he heard from the Izbitcher, from the Meah Shiloach, that the Emes is with the shita that says Ahu Sava. It's interesting that the Izbitcher took a side on two shitas in Tosfos. And he says, no, for sure, Ahu Sava means Eliyahu Navi. With the Kushya Tosfos Shamein Kan Mekayim. This is not the place to discuss who Ahu Sava is, but Agav Urcha, I always make this point that Reb Tzadok it says here in the introduction, that whenever there's a parenthesis, it means that after Reb Tzadok wrote the whole book and many years passed, he went over it again before he published it, and he put in these parentheses. So he put in this part about who is Ahu Sava. But to get back to the main text question, Nichamu Ahu Sava, Nichamu. The Eliyahu Navi comforted Abaye in Sukkot Nun Beis. Ve'alzeh Amru, and on this it says, "The lost Lavai, fantastic pshat, a time, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to come and he's going to, Lasid Lavai maybe means when Mashiach comes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to take the Satan who, Yetzer Hara, Satan who Malach HaMavos. The Lasid Lavai Tzadikim Nidme Lahem Yetzer Hara Kahar. And the Gemara tells us that the same Gemara in Sukkah, that the Tzadikim look at the Yetzer Hara in the eye, they're going to say, oh my gosh, this thing is so big, like this Yetzer Hara. It's like a mountain. Rishayim and the Rishayim, which I guess are going to be around too, so they're going to look at the Yetzer Hara and they're going to say, Chutasara. Chutasara is Chazal's word for the smallest thing that you can measure. Chutasara, like a hair. So there's a lot of Bali Muslims speak about this Gemara, like what Tzadikim see the Yetzer Hara as like a huge challenge, and the Rishayim see it as they make a big deal about it. It's a Kehut Asara. As Reb Tzadok Pshat, Eino Shaker, they're both saying the Emes. They're both saying the Emes. Rak Shnei Emes. Ki Le'elu, depends who you are. Le'elu, Jukasav Taivos Hatsuma B'Yaiser. If you're a Tzadik, so now you have a huge Yetzer Hara. Goes with the territory. So Mamela, the Tzadikim look at it and they see Har Gadol. That's the end. Mashain Kain. Rishayim. Whoever thinks like this, that a Rasha has less of a Yetzer Hara than a Tzadik. Zelum is a pasuk, but whoever thinks of it like that. Well, you think Tzaddik have a bigger Yetzer Hara than Rishayim?
It has to be a balance, otherwise again, no bechira.
So you mean like the Tzaddik wants to kill somebody more than the mafia guy?
Mafia guy doesn't see it as the Yetzer Hara. It's like Mutter.
That's a different shot. I'm talking about his shot.
Is conquering Yetzer Hara makes it bigger? Like conquering makes it bigger from the Tzaddik?
By the what?
Conquering it, it doesn't do both, it doesn't do that Yetzer Hara. Therefore, it gets bigger. So Russia can't hold himself back, so it's very small. It gets
That's a different shot. What he's saying is, I want to learn Reb Tzadok. No, the Bali Musar talk about this. Everyone has a different shot, including themselves. But what?
Yeah, so you're sharp.
So that's why I keep shifting. Right. But what he's saying is, the Chiddush Nifla is that they're both looking at the same thing, and they're seeing it different because it is different. That's the Chiddush. They're not seeing it different because to me it's a challenge to you, it's not a challenge. That's not what it says. They're both seeing it different because it is different, because the Yetzer Hara that's being shechted over here, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is putting on display in the town square, so a tzaddik says that's a big Yetzer Hara because it is. And the Rosh is saying, well, it's Kehut Asara because it is. So he's saying it's deeper than what we've thought until now. It's like Hagufa. For the tzaddikim, they are tzaddikim. They are tzaddikim. But Yetzer Hara for them is kahar gadol, which is compatible, says Reb Tzadok, with what Eliyahu Navi taught us, that kol gadol mechaver yitzrei gadol mimeno. So here's the case. I'm gadol mechaverei. Sorry, I'm gadol mechaverei, and mamela my Yetzer Hara is bigger than your Yetzer Hara. So if you want to go ahead and measure the godless of somebody, you measure how big their Yetzer Hara is and take it from there. Which I want to just add in here in parentheses, take it or leave it, which I find from experience. I find that people that have these like huge Yetzer Hara is usually very, very special neshamas. I'm not saying it as some kind of nechama. I'm not Eliyahu Navi, but I'm just saying that to me it's always a kli. It's always the kids or people or whatever they might be that are extremely thoughtful and extremely mitragesh emotionally, and could be that their self is terrible, but I think you have a kli there of Yitzrei Gadol. You have a kli which you can really develop as a very, very unusual type of a person. And I'm just saying, that's what I find from experience. Best Kalim.
How do you measure it then? Because if the Russia who's killing whatever he's doing, and then the Tzadok who's doing nothing, you would say the Russians are the greatest Hara, the let's say, a four.
Potential.
How do you?
And potential. But when we see a kid, one of our kids or somebody else's kids, like a kid, who like seems to have like such a big Yetzer, they're lighting firecrackers in your living room and they're beating other kids up and stuff like that. So we think like, let's whip this out of him. Like, let's just beat it out of them. But the fact of the matter is, I don't know if you can or you can't. Maybe they make it worse anyways. But well, I don't know. I'm not into beating kids, but there's another thing to recognize. Forget about your derech of chinuch. There's another thing to recognize is that, like, probably Reb Chaim Brisker was a Vilder Chaya. Shamati, because it's not a. It was.
What kind of Russia has a small Yetzer? Because if you have a person and he has a big Yetzer and a big Yetzer Tov, and it turns out to be a Tzaddik, he follows his Yetzer Tov. So if he turned out to be Russia following his Yetzer Hara, then that meant he had a big Yetzer.
So I think you're saying it wrong, because I think it's an excellent question, and I think you're saying it wrong. It's not the pshat that the tzaddik follows his Yetzer Tov. The tzaddik uses everything that's built into his Yetzer Hara and uses that to become a big tzaddik. That's the pshat kol hagadol mechaver yitzrei gadol mimenu. I have to share something with you, just a mashal, that I read by accident many years ago in a tour guide, in a guiding book, in a tourist book, anyways. But it said there was that Yellowstone National Park. I've never been to Yellowstone National Park. I have a tremendous cheshek to go to Yellowstone National Park, looking for sponsors. My Yetzer, I want to see the geysers. I want to see the animals. I want to see those in the plantation. I want to see those. I just have such a cheshek to see. Always have. But anyways, not the Grand Canyon, but that's Yellowstone National Park. But anyways, I was reading up on Yellowstone National Park. So in 1925, I think it was, I hope I'm getting this right. So in 1925, there was a number of, it's been around for a long time, Yellowstone National Park, but there was a number of incidences where wolves were there, and they were biting people that were hiking, and in fact killed somebody. So they made a nimnu v'gamru. They made a decision. The park, whatever, National Park Society, they made a decision that they're going to kill the wolves. This is a dangerous thing, sakana. And in 1 year, they killed 137 wolves. So Yellowstone National Park had no wolves, and it was a safe place to go. And what happened was that the food of a wolf, not people, is elks. And what happened was there was a ribui, because there was no predator, there was a ribui of elks to a ridiculous degree. Like the whole Yellowstone National Park was full of elks. And because there's no wolves to eat them. Okay, it's a different site. So the elks feed on a very, very prominent and common tree and leaf that's in that Yellowstone National Park. So they ate all of the greenery of these trees. So now there was no wolves. There was a lot of elk, and the greenery of within a couple of months, like all the elks had to eat. So they ate all this greenery. Well, that's the greenery that the beavers use to build dams in the water. So when they build dams in the water, so two things happen simultaneously in nature here. I mean, the Rebbeinu Shalom's, the flies up by, but can't outsmart the Bria. But what happened here was two things. Number one was there were no dams, so there were floods, and the boundaries of the water went all over and killed all kinds of animals and all kinds of vegetation. And because there was no trees to shade the water became warm. And when the water became warm, all the cold water fish disappeared. And when the cold water fish disappeared, cold water fish is the food of thousands of kinds of birds, songbirds, beautiful birds, the ones that everybody went to Yellowstone National Park to find, to see those birds. Everyone's looking at doing bird watching in Yellowstone National Park. There were no birds because there was no cold water fish, because there was no beavers, because there was no trees, because there was elks, and because there was no wolves. So that's Maisa Shahaya. You can Google it. I got you.
So people stopped coming and then the wolves came back.
So they put they brought in 1973 300.
That's 50 years later.
Yeah, and in 1973 I think it was. They must have gotten them from like Bet Shemesh or something. They brought in these wolves and encouraged them to procreate, and now Yellowstone Park is full of wolves and not so many elks, and a lot of vegetation and a lot of beavers and a lot of dams, and the cold water fish came back. Hence, you can go to Yellowstone Park now, and yes, you have to be careful with the wolves, but you've got all these beautiful birds to look at, famously hummingbirds and songbirds, which are very, very prominent in Yellowstone National Park. So do we take a shul trip to Yellowstone National? Did I give you a cheshek? But what's the Musar Haskell of the whole story? Why am I telling you the story? Musar Haskell is the wolf a good thing or is the wolf a bad thing? All right, it eats people. We all know the story of Little Red Riding Hood, right? We all know that wolves are dangerous things. So kill them. No, you kill them, the whole ecosystem completely gets destroyed. I want to bring a parallel to the Yetzer.
Sounds like the Gemara where you took away the cheshek for eyes and it was in the way.
Exactly like the Gemara. So let me say that this is a parable or a metaphor to the Yetzer. Is it dangerous? Yes. Can it lead us to do wrong? Yes. Has it led people to do things ad kedei avodah zarah misa arayis, avodah zarah retzicha arayis? Yes. Ad kedei kach, that the Gemara famously says that the Anshe Knesset Hagdola were mispalel that there should not be any more Yetzer of arayis and any more Yetzer of avodah zarah. I don't think the Gemara says that they were mispalel for the avodah zarah for the Yetzer of Ritzicha. Those are different shmos. But so they were mispalel, and the Gemara reports that good news and bad news. The good news was that without the Yetzer of Arayis, people were more moral and civil and polite. And the bad news was that chickens stopped laying eggs. And animals stopped to bring it. Or it's like what they did was they killed the wolf. They killed the wolf, and so and there's no Yetzer for avodah zarah, so that we still don't have a Yetzer for avodah zarah. But they killed something there too, because I go back to Rav Huntner again. He said that what was killed there. Yetzer of avodah zarah was not killed. Yetzer for avodah zarah was killed the innermost chukka of a person to worship, and we don't have a chukka to worship any longer. We do want to be oved as Hashem, but it's not the same as it was during the time when avodah zarah was so popular. I don't know if they killed it from the whole world, because there are some places in the world that have avodah zarah, but we became litvaks. Like we don't have such a big chukka. So like that was a big loss too. The Yetzer of Arayas, killing that was created an impossible hemshech for the world. So they actually were mispalel to bring it back. And the Gemara is a whole fascinating story about a lion made out of fire. that came out over there. But I'm just saying the positive shot, and this is where I'm saying that I think we have to tweak the way we're looking at it. The positive shot is that the Yetzer Hara is actually a koach. It's not something it's a koach. So the Mela kol hagadol mechaver yitzrei gadol mimenu. This koach can manifest itself in evil, but it can also manifest itself in the greatest level of righteousness. And kol hagadol mechaver yitzrei gadol mimenu. Let me just read with you one more thing.
Yetzer is an engine.
What is Yetzer? So, what are you calling it? Engine. Koach. I give up. It's worthy of study, yeah? Let's see, the pasuk says, I was looking into this a little bit, and it's very interesting because before Hashem destroyed the world with the Mabul, so Hashem, he said something like, Ki yetzer leiv ha'adam rak kol hayoim. No.
The first one is called Yetzer.
I know, I have to comment here. I'm just saying that the first time he didn't say. He said, Yetzer leiv ha'adam rak kol hayoim. Then after he did that's in Parshas Bereishis. In Parshas Noach, he says, Vayarach Hashem esreich hanichoyach, vayemer Hashem el liboy, le'oisif l'kalel oides ha'adam ba'avur ha'adam, ki yetzer leiv ha'adam ra min urav. It's a chiddush. Yetzer leiv ha'adam ra min urav, le'oisif oid lahakes es kol chai kasher osi. He said, I'm going to do this again. I'm not going to make the Mabul again. So it's just very interesting that the reason he made the Mabul is because Yetzer Hara was so big. The reason he said, I'm never going to make another Mabul again is because his Yetzer Hara is so big. So we're talking about God. Remember Hashem.
The Lashon is different.
Left and Lashon. So Rav Hirsch says, if I read you the whole Rav Hirsch about the etymology of the word Ne'urav and Nar, we would be here for a long time. I tell you something about Rav Hirsch. I'm not a big bucky in it, but every time I start reading something in Hirsch, so I say, like, what's such a arichos? And then when I start reading it, I see why it's makatzer too much. Like, I don't know. just personal experience. But here he says, I want to read you a sentence. Woe unto them that take the average of child and adolescent nature to be evil. Who has really observed children says, no, it's not true that youth is bad. It is not min of the Yetzer leiv ha'adam, that man makes evil his ideal. That's not what it means. In normal times, one finds a much greater number of adults than of adolescents whose hearts and minds are directed to evil. It was more Yetzer Hara by Gedolim than by Ketanim. He says, quite a lot does get done by youth. Is there anything like a youth movement? Has anybody been part of I always say, like, I freed Russian Jewry personally. I stood there in NCSY and I marched in front of the Russian embassy every day. I don't know, my father didn't come. But when he was a youth, he was part of the Haganah, So there's something very, very strong about youth. What is that? Quite a lot gets done by youth that is bad because they are not yet used to bow to the command of duty. Meaning, like, don't tell me any rules. To place their necks under the ol ha-mitzvahs, because they still regard self-control and obedience to duty as an irksome yoke, which their nature striving up to independence shake off. But it is just this, in this independence of will, which is not so easily overcome, which in their immaturity certainly does appear as obstinacy, that the whole morality of the future man has its roots. Just as God chose Israel, not because it was the most amenable of nations, but because it was the most stiff-necked of nations. Because once this obstinacy and independence of spirit had been overcome and directed into use in the right direction for good, then this obstinacy and independence would be used to preserve the stick, obstinacy, and stick obstinately to the good and right. Will be akshanim l'toiv. So it's not Rav Tzadok, this is Rav Hirsch. And so what he's saying is that, like, that koach of youth, by the way, I go back to what I said before, like the koach of youth has to be harnessed. So, and hagulfa, that they're not makabel, that they don't want to be makabel, forget about all mitzvahs, any oil, because they don't have that maturity yet, because that part of the brain has not been developed yet, and that's why you're not bar mitzvah until you're bar mitzvah, you're not a bar onshim until you're chaf shanim. But the fact is that what the beauty of youth is, that's the time you get to develop your Yetzer Hara. Like, let's see, and if you want to know a kid, so take a look what their Yetzer Hara is, because you see a tremendous amount of koach there. And this is what Rav Hirsch is saying. So Hashem said, he's quoting God here, not Eliyahu Navi. He's quoting Hashem here. I'm not going to destroy the world anymore. Ki Yetzer leva adam rami ne'ura. The pshat is that they're really a good people. The humans are actually a good people. Minu'urav. Now, of course, there's bechira chavshis and there's chinuch and all the different balances and training that has to go into a person. That's why we do chinuch. But be'etzem, the sikum of the whole thing, summary of the whole thing is that Yetzer Hara is wrongly named, but that name came l'chora after the chet of the Eitz Hadas, where we made the Ra part of it is that we made a whole balagan within ourselves, and it became all very, very confusing. And before, there must have been a Yetzer Hara before the Eitz Hadas, because he ate from the Eitz Hadas. so there must have been some kind of a Yetzer Hara, but it was mibachutz, as the Mekubalim say. It wasn't internal, but it was the wolf. It was the creation of Hashem, which was there to make human beings useful and great, and be able to make our neshama what it's supposed to be. So hence, like, you don't want to get rid of that. That's not what you want to do. You don't want to give a kid medication to get rid of the Yetzer Hara, because then you're destroying somebody. Destroying them. That's the lazy way out. I'm giving advice here, but I'm just saying, lamashal. Because the wolf you have to be protected from it, but you have to also harness it. Because it's doing everything that needs to be done for the bria. Okay, thank you very much.
Why is a kli that's moved? So a group for drishas ha'emes. Was that the?
I think the koach of drisha. When a person has a taiva, so you become a genius. How do I get that taiva? Like look at an addict, like the whole day they're looking. How do I get this taiva filled? So that koach of drisha, better than the deadbeat, who's not looking for anything. So he's not going to look for emes.
This is why dafka emes. Why is that the drisha that he's? That some of his taiva is dorish. Dorish is emes.
I don't think that the taivas can get emes. I think there's a common denominator of drisha. If you're a searching person, eventually you'll find emes. If guided correctly.
I'm just taking a picture.
You want me to hold it up?
So the pasuk in Bereshit, the end of Bereshit says, "Kol machshavos yetzer machshavos libo rak rakovem." So there it first says that
it's called because he doesn't harness it.
No. Right, when he brings it into his libo and then allows it to kind of take over.
Rak halayom, meaning he's allowed to take over.
Yeah, so
I've got the area coming to Netzach now, so I'm running.
I miss you.
So he refers saying that it's the Yetzer is.
And I'm not going to destroy them because this Ra has a tremendous potential if used correctly. So in the case of before the Mabul,
they will misuse it.
They let themselves go with it. But in either case, here or there. This is what the way Hirsch explains the pasuk. There was no chasarn in the Yetzer Hara per se. The chasarn was the fact that we gave it up.
Also, if you meet people who have like serious addiction issues, you see like that Gemara about the Yetzer had to kill you. I always felt, that's exaggeration. It's okay.
But I also see
you meet people like that, and you see
some of the most spiritual seekers that I've ever seen was in
recovery.
So he's saying, okay, how does the Yetzer bring you to MS? But, that is the 12 steps, right? That is the 12 steps.
It's not a bug, it's a feature.
I mean, it's like the first thing that you're supposed to do when you're
But most of them don't make it. Recidivism.
What does that mean, make it? You mean they fall. But it's probably a good idea, a good example of Yetzer Hara. It's tough. It's an ongoing milchama. A recovery alcoholic will say, I'm 20,000 days.